Hello there, my name is Kevin. I am both the founder and owner of IzArts, if you don't already know who I am. This is a short informational video on something that was brought up by my colleague and co-owner, Max, or MTB, whom of which brought up monoamine and dopamine hypothesis in a video he recently posted on our YouTube, which you can see. It's going to be down in the description of this video. Anyway, that theory, or popularly referred to as hypothesis, is called chemical imbalance. And this is obviously an IzArts production, and you can see more of this kind of stuff from us both on our YouTube, if you subscribe, which we encourage you to do if you like what we post, on our website, which is izhearts.com, which will also be posted down in the description, and on our G Plus page, which you can also find down in the description. Regardless, I'm going to continue on here and kind of show you what this is all about. So first off, we have the hypothesis, which is going to be chemical imbalance. So chemical imbalance is a hypothesis, and I want to stress this. A hypothesis in science is far different than a theory. So a hypothesis, simply put, it's just an educated guess, which is normally made by someone who has experience in the field of whatever they're studying, and there's little data or information available, and thus they have to go ahead and assume a few things. And the theory of chemical imbalance is split up into two major sub-theories, which would actually be sub-hypotheses. I want to stress, though, a theory in science, and most people do tend to make this a mistake, is that they tend to assume that a theory is kind of some flimsy idea or guess. That's more or less what a hypothesis can sometimes be. A theory is normally a hypothesis that's evolved either because it's been changed or because testing's improved or information has improved and thus it's been changed because of that. That can be replicated continuously through testing, different people testing at different environments. Kind of stuff like that, to kind of figure out the validity of a hypothesis. Once it's reached that point where it can be continually repeated and generally speaking is accepted and has been peer-reviewed, it becomes a theory over time. For those of you whom of which want an example, gravity is actually a theory. So is evolution. And these things have a ton of scientific proof and evidence for them, but they are not considered scientific fact. They are just considered a theory, which a theory unto itself is a very hard thing to achieve and attain in science. Very hard. And a hypothesis is still an educated guess. It's educated. It's not normally just off in the middle of nowhere where some person decides that something's going to be that way. So I do want to stress that because people tend to, in their mind, degrade these kinds of things and determine these kinds of things. So this is no way just a random run-on. A theory holds a lot of prestige in academia and in science, and a hypothesis, it's an educated guess. And that's what we're going to get into, is the two kind of sub-educated guesses of chemical imbalance hypothesis. And the first of that is the monoamine hypothesis, which is going to be hypothesis 1. Now, for those who don't know what a monoamine is basically a description of a group of neurotransmitters such as serotonin and dopamine, which we find in the brain. And the idea of monoamine hypothesis is that depression and some other mental illnesses are caused by a lack of monoamine chemicals or neurotransmitters in the brain, such as dopamine and, as I said before, serotonin. And this was kind of put into a more higher level of acceptance by the scientific community when in the 1950s the accidental discovery of tricyclic antidepressants and MAOIs, or monoamine, as I said before, the chemical group, oxidase inhibitors, so things that block monoamine, so things that would block dopamine and serotonin from activating the rest of the brain and eliciting a emotional response. And it was found that if you decrease these things and block them, it would decrease psychotic symptoms. So it would alleviate paranoia or other things of the sort. And this was found and replicated multiple times and was gaining a lot of credibility at the time. And this gets us to one of the other ones, which is hypothesis 2, which is the dopamine hypothesis. This one fell out of favor, actually, because of the Manamean hypothesis in many respects. And this is when scientists discovered that blocking dopamine function had an impact on psychotic symptoms. It, as I kind of hinted at before, it decreased them. The issue and what shut this thing down is the fact that other monoamine chemicals, in this case serotonin, when blocking the serotonin function in the brain, had the same effect and sometimes greater, arguably. And this made the scientific community consider the dopamine hypothesis kind of a half-truth, because it didn't explain why all the other monoamines were doing that until it was expanded upon, and that ended up evolving into what we consider chemical imbalance hypothesis, which was eventually kind of falling out of favor with the scientific community for the exact same reasons as dopamine. It was kind of only a half-truth, and we'll get to why in a minute, and it was also seen as overly simplistic. And this is what we're going to get to, is why it fell out of favor. So, how chemical imbalance hypothesis is seen by modern science. And I'm going to go through two quotes here. This is the first quote. Low serotonin levels no more cause depression than low aspirin levels cause headache. And this is a quote from Jonathan Leo and Jeffrey Lacasse, both in university institutions, one of which obviously knows osteopathic medicine. And they did this in a paper they wrote analyzing pharmaceuticals in psychology, the use of drugs. And they kind of ran at this idea that serotonin levels don't really have much of an effect on depression in comparison to the fact that low aspirin levels cause a headache. It's a very interesting quote at that sense. And the second quote here is from a gentleman named Wayne Goodman, who happens to be the chair of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, in the Psychopharmaceutical Advisory Committee of sorts, which you can obviously tell what that does. And he described this serotogenic theory of depression as a useful metaphor for understanding depression, though not one that he uses with his own psychiatric patients. Useful metaphor. I'd like to elaborate on that, the useful metaphor part. Obviously just a useful comparison for understanding depression. So not the actual thing, just a good comparison, not even a representation, a comparison of depression, though not one that he even cares to use with his own psychiatric patients. So that really does speak volumes of the modern day academic and clinical, shall we say, observation and understanding and acceptance of chemical imbalance theory. It's not very high. And here is why. The hypothesis of chemical imbalance, as it's kind of been hinted at and I've been saying, fell out of favor with most academics and many psychologists. It's now considered simplistic, and this is why. It fails to explain how the chemical imbalance occurs in the first place. It does not state what causes it, which is kind of a huge portion of curing something or fixing something, now isn't it? And that's kind of the real issue that clinical psychology had and most of the medical community had, and the academic community found quite annoying. And because of this, many different sciences are currently trying to explain what causes what we call mental illness. Many theories have and are currently being developed, in all honesty. Unfortunately, there's currently no other demonstrably superior hypothesis. So there's nothing that, when put to the test, actually does even nearly as well as chemical imbalance hypothesis, unfortunately. Though, apparently very recently, there has been a team of biologists, not entirely sure where, I just read up on this, so excuse me if I am not entirely correct on this, who are currently trying to link something in the human digestive tract to mental illness, and they're calling it, I believe, nutritional psychology. It's a fairly interesting concept. I don't know how far they've gotten. I encourage you to look it up if you're interested, but that is one of the theories that's coming around, so it's fairly interesting, and that's why I do say many different sciences. So it's a very interesting collaboration from the scientific community on trying to answer this, now that the one theory that was really truly the whole staple of everything has suddenly gone away. It's no longer popular, shall we say, with science. Now, that leads us to the end of this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. This was both by me and in kind of collaboration with MTB, or Max. We would love it if you guys left comments in the description for what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd love to see, that kind of stuff. We'd love to hear from you. If you like what we post, please do subscribe. We hope to be posting some really good content in the future. And, show your support if you enjoy what we do, and you enjoy what this is. And I hope to hear from you guys soon in the comment sections and on our G Plus page. Once again, feel free to visit our website and our G Plus page. They are down in the description of this video. And hope to see you guys soon. Kevin signing off.